Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Anthony here, and glad you're back on the Investigative Journal on this February 27th, 2017 day on our calendar, and I am so glad this month is almost over. First of all, I can't even spell the word sometimes. I don't know why they put the R in February. I can't even say it. I say February. And then I never know how many days there are in the month. And in fact, this month has been the rainiest month I've ever seen in the state of California. And it's pouring today. As you can tell, my voice is a little hoarse due to a cold, so I'm going to get through this show. But first, I have a lot of loyal listeners, and many tell me they come to listen to my anti-Jesuit quotes and how I intermingle the hidden government and the Jesuit order with world and our country's politics, and many people like that. So let me start off with a Jesuit quote, and then we'll get to what I consider to be a very important show today, and we'll tell you what that's all about in a minute, so don't go away. Now, way back when, Brigadier General Thomas M. Harris, he was around during the Civil War days. And how come all these people knew about this then, warning us today, and no one talks about it in politics? Nobody. Nobody talks about it in the media, do they? Nobody really will get to the truth. I mean, Adolf Hitler talked about the Jesuits. He said how important they were in forming the Third Reich. And many of his SS guys talked about it too. Mussolini talked about it. I can tell you Abraham Lincoln talked about it, and still nobody today talks about it. The story is taboo, and I wondered why. I always said from the first day I came back from Rome and then realized I could never get this in the paper and left journalism in a sense. Oh, well, I had to do something, so I became a sports reporter on a local paper covering high school sports. And I figured it's better to do that than to get in arguments with the editorial staff. So I enjoyed that period of time, but decided to take my talents elsewhere and went to law school, which was a very good experience. But I've never practiced law because I couldn't find anything I liked in it. But anyway, that's my fault. But, and I've been criticized for that, even by my family, saying, are you crazy? You spend all that money going to law school and you don't do anything? Well, hey, life's not over yet. It's not over till it's over, right? So anyway, I got to tell you this. Before we'll get to the Jesuit quote and then the most important part of our show. But yesterday, I listened to the Oscars. Okay, and I went on and off, and let me tell you something. Only parts of it that I listened to. And I chose instead to listen to a spring training baseball game. Now, you know how great those are, but it was better than the Oscars because all I heard all night was these little Jimmy Kimmel, late night talk show star, was these little barbs on Trump. Then every commercial was this kind of commercial like, we are the people, we are the world. It was a globalist display of complete idiot. These people in Hollywood really criticize normal people, for wanting to put America first. And it's so hypocritical. They talking against the wall he wants to build. How many of them, you ever go to Hollywood and do the tour? I used to go, I lived in LA for a long, long time while I was going to school. And so, in fact, even got to know some of the stars because I did some acting to get through law school, right? And all of their homes are guarded by security, and they got all these walls. I mean, how hypocritical are they? We know they are, and many people are catching on. But anyway, tell me this isn't something. At the end of the show, if you didn't watch it, they were giving, Warren Beatty and gets on, him and who else? I can't remember who. Warren Beatty to give the Best Picture award. So they go through a list of about 7 pictures. He looks at the card and kind of he's looking at it for a long period of time and going, "What's wrong?" Well, he said the Best Picture of the year goes to La La Land. That was a movie out. I haven't seen it. So then I shut it off and woke up this morning and listened to the news very early, and I found out that they made a mistake. They gave Warren Beatty the wrong card, and actually during the speech of the directors and producers of La La Land, they said, "Whoa, it's a mistake. Moonlight has won the award. This is not a joke. Get up here." So, I mean, Hollywood goes all night criticizing Trump for being disorganized, for having everything out of whack, and they can't even get the climax of the show is bungled like I've never seen before. So why don't you guys just go back home and make your movies and get out of politics? Because if you can't even get the card right, and tell people who've been listening all night what the best movie is, how the hell can we trust anything you say? But anyway, let's get to Brigadier Thomas Harris. Why don't they make movies about this? I think the best movie would be, telling us the truth about the Abraham Lincoln assassination would be a good movie. But I even know a friend of mine named C.T. Wilcox, who's a Canadian, who wrote the definitive book on his assassination, couldn't get the movie done. Interesting. And he went to some bigwigs in Hollywood. Nobody wants to touch it because Hollywood's controlled not by the Jews, but by the Catholic cult. Now, and I call it a cult. Now, Brigadier General Thomas Harris said this: "The organization of the Vatican, or the Roman Catholic Church hierarchy, is a complete military despotism, of which the Pope is the ostensible, apparent-seeming head, but of which the Black Pope, the Superior General of the Jesuits, is the real head. The Black Pope is the head of the Order of the Jesuits and is called Jesuit General, they call him the Black Pope, the Superior General. He not only has command of his order, but also directs and controls the general policy of the Roman Church. He, the Black Pope, is the power behind the throne, and is the real potential head of the hierarchy. The whole machine is under the strictest rules of military discipline. The whole thought and will of this machine to plan, propose, and execute is found in its head. There is no independence of thought or of action in its subordinate parts. Implicit and unquestioning obedience to the orders of the superiors in authority is the sworn duty of the priesthood of every grade." Now, that was Thomas Harris. Now, we got a serious problem because we have the white pope. The real pope is the first Jesuit pope ever. So we got a black pope and a white pope, which is really the black pope, and he controls everything. Okay? So the Jesuits have taken over everything. And when the military order is taken over, nothing good is going to happen. And they're already planning a World War III and all of the things that we've talked about in this show. It's just a matter of time. And knowing we can't get that story out to the press, which I think would be the biggest one, to really tell American people what the hidden government is about, we can make this statement on this show, and there's a few other shows that make this, that the Jesuits, and through the CIA and all of their operatives in the Mossad and everything like that, have created ISIS. And Hillary Clinton and her foreign policy during the Barack Obama days, and even before that, were instrumental in creating that. Look at the destabilization of Libya. They could have kept Gaddafi in there and he would have fought back on the terrorism. But no, they got rid of him so ISIS could grow. Look what they did in Syria. They want to change the Assad regime. If you'd have left him alone, despite all of his, we always say, well, we got to solve the human rights problem. Yeah, by solving the human rights, trying to get Assad out of there, you let ISIS grow, and in fact, militarily, have given them money. And we got Jesuits over there making sure it all goes well. And then we look at Iraq. Just look at the whole Middle East. We've spent $6 trillion, and it's worse than ever. And I think Trump said something interesting, probably his best statement ever. He said, if the recent presidents would have just went to the beach or played golf the whole time and did nothing, we'd be better off than we are today. And he says, I've inherited a mess. So now tomorrow he's going to give a big speech, and they're going to ramp up the military, which has been depleted under Obama, and he's going to propose $54 billion in extra spending to build the military up, taking those cuts from the EPA and other places. So I'll watch that speech tomorrow, a speech before the joint Congress. Half will be standing, half will be sitting, booing. So half standing and cheering, half sitting and booing. And that's what, and Trump will be Trump. I think he's not going to come and try to be the great conciliatory reconciler here tomorrow. I think he's going to hit him hard and say, this is what I want to do. So, it's a fun political stage to watch. But knowing we can't get the hidden hand, the Jesuit control ever out to the media, let's settle for second best. And one of the biggest stories that's been held from you happened recently in Turkey when that failed coup took place. And they were going to try to do the same thing in Turkey. I'm talking about the Clintons and the Obamas and all those people that they did in the other Middle East countries they just mentioned. So you take Turkey out, you take Erdogan. Now, if you don't know anything about Turkish politics, they're probably one of the more democratic countries in that region, and I call it a firewall. And that's why we have a military base there with nukes. Okay? So what do? In our infinite wisdom? We create a coup to get rid of Erdogan so we can bring in a regime that is very sympathetic to ISIS and just destroy Turkey. Well, Erdogan got tipped off from guess who? Putin. And our bungling CIA and the coup they tried failed. So then Erdogan came out very strongly and said, listen, no more military base for a while. I don't know what's happening there. And then he said, I want Fetullah Gulen, who's sitting up in a mansion in Pennsylvania, brought over by the Clintons in the late 80s, 90s. And by the way, ask yourself this question. Is your child being taught through one of his charter schools? Now, we have Betsy DeVos, the new Secretary of Education, wants to give education back to the states, wants to create more charter schools. But the largest charter school organization in our country, and some say it's anywhere from $250 million to $500 million of funding from you, the taxpayer, goes to Fetullah Gulen and his radical Islamist movement, which is masked in moderate Islam. Now, let me give you my personal assessment. Erdogan met with Obama, and they double-talked and said, yeah, we'll give Gulen back, but it's going to take time. So he knew he wasn't going to be there, so Kerry and him just left. Now, Erdogan said to Trump, we need Gulen back, because he's the one that is the radical Islamist. And he was the one, when he was in Turkey, that started to create all of these people that the United States, used to try to kill me. So there's a big problem there. I haven't heard anything regarding the Trump administration's policy, but that would be basically, if he's trying to get him out, the CIA are blocking it, and the Jesuits blocking it strongly, because they don't want him to talk, put it that way. He may just disappear, but he's a very, very powerful guy. And I think that's the story behind the story, because we know we have radical Islamists coming here, etc., funded by us, and creating, whether it be false flag terrorism or real terrorism, fear in the hearts of most American people. But behind the scenes, we have this radical movement of Gulen, who was brought here by the Clintons, telling you that they should be tried as traitors, but they're not. They're exalted as heroes. And so Gulen is here, funded by us, teaching radical Islam. Now, I first became aware of him over a decade ago when I was covering stories in Europe, and he was doing the same thing in Norway, Sweden, and other places, and everybody there knew about him and said, he's a bad dude, right? Well, why is he over here doing it and nobody talks about it? That's what we're going to explore today. Now, I'm Sibel Edmonds, who's a whistleblower, did a lot on this story. And Sibel, I've got a short clip because it's very important that you understand that Clinton's brought them over for a reason. Now, the question I ask you, is your child being taught by one of these? And what are they really teaching? So we will get to the Clinton connection to this. through a short Sibel Edmonds interview with another radio broadcaster. Then I found something quite interesting. Who is Fetullah Gulen through the eyes of what he says and what many of his cult people say after they left? And what they're saying is he is creating a radical Islamic movement internally. And he's doing it all over the world, and he won't stop until basically Western civilization is toast. So I thought we'd do that. I'm not going to be able to get all of it on today, but I'll get most of it. And we'll continue it tomorrow. And then either tomorrow or Wednesday, you've got to come back because I got a full report on sanctuary cities. And if you haven't heard what they are, go check it out. But I think it's the issue that may lead to our second civil war. And I'll get to that either tomorrow or Wednesday. So let's go and look at the Clinton connection to Fetullah Gulen. Okay, I'm going to play this for you. I got to pot it up myself. Hopefully, no mistakes. Here we go.
WikiLeaks has released Clinton emails implicating Clinton and Mullah Gulen's intimate connections. However, the Gulen-Clinton ties and joint operations go back much further. In fact, they go back to 1998 and 1999, during the starting stage of Operation Gladio B, when Fetullah Gulen was brought into the United States via CIA per Clinton administration's strategy for Central Asia, Caucasus, and the Middle East. The first person in the U.S. to expose Fetullah Gulen, when no one had ever heard of his name, was Sibel Edmonds. Starting in 2011, Edmonds began exposing Fetullah Gulen and his network.
Okay, I got to say something. I also was exposing him, but you see, nobody wants to listen to or will put on when you get the Jesuit connection here. That's what I was doing, making a Jesuit connection, so nobody hears it.
Gulen's major role in CIA NATO Operation Gladio B, Operation Gladio, and CIA's Graham Fuller as Gulen's handler. And most importantly, the Clinton administration's direct role in utilizing and directing Fetullah Gulen and his network beginning in 1997. Here is Sibel Edmonds discussing how the CIA-NATO Gladio B operation brought Gulen into the United States in 1998 and 1999 during the Clinton administration.
The Gladio went to Plan B mode for Central Asia Caucasus via Islam, and these Islamic factions, they already had a candidate in mind, a leader. And this man was this preacher, this symbol of fanatic Islam in Turkey. Now they no longer call him fanatic because he's supported by U.S. We call him a moderate Islamist. And his name is Fetullah Gulen. Now, Fetullah Gulen was preaching in Turkey during these 1990s against the secular government. Now, the military regime in Turkey hated this guy, so he was wanted. There were already some trials. They wanted to put him in jail, okay? He was going through all this period. Accident happens, and he's wanted. He's actually declared criminal, terrorist, anti-secularist by the Turkish government. Yet, mysteriously, after Susurluk incident, this guy, Fetullah Gulen, in a private Gulf Stream, ends up in the United States of America, lands here in Washington, D.C. Why the United States? This is a great Turkic republic. Why are you coming to U.S.? He hasn't left the United States since. This is since 1997.
In fact, Edmonds was the first person exposing CIA's Graham Fuller as Fetullah Gulen's handler for the CIA NATO operations in Turkey, Central Asia, and the Caucasus.
Fuller himself has an interesting background that includes his 2-decade stint with the Central Intelligence Agency. During that time, he served as National Intelligence Officer for Near East and South Asia. One of his most notorious acts during that time was penning a memo that, according to the New York Times, later became the basis for the Iran-Contra scandal. In addition, Fuller has long made the argument that Islam is a potentially useful geopolitical tool for the United States to manipulate for their own ends. He has been quoted as saying, "The policy of guiding the evolution of Islam and of helping them against our adversaries worked marvelously well in Afghanistan against the Russians. The same doctrines can still be used to destabilize what remains of Russian power, and especially to counter the Chinese influence in Central Asia. Fuller's ties also extend to the network of Imam Fetullah Gulen, an Islamic preacher who was run out of Turkey for allegations of conspiracy to overthrow the secular government. Gulen ended up in Pennsylvania, where he now oversees a vast organization known as the Gulen Movement, which has over $20 billion at its disposal for setting up Islamic schools in over 100 countries. Being a wanted man by the Turkish government, Gulen did not just waltz into the U.S. and gain immediate residency. Instead, he fought a protracted legal battle that included reference letters from well-connected political figures, including none other than Graham Fuller.
And in a similar vein, the Gulen movement, which many of you have heard of undoubtedly, is the biggest social movement based on religious values in Turkey today, with huge infrastructure, educational infrastructure, devoting lots of attention to education, communications, publications, and schools now in perhaps over 100 countries of the world, including in the United States, and has many centers, including here in Texas, and indeed many of the lectures that I've been giving here have been part of the cooperation with the various Gulen-affiliated organizations.
Graham Fuller retired from the CIA about maybe 10, 15 years ago, but he has still been working as contractor with the CIA. Now, as with Graham Fuller, this is very interesting, Lou, because about 6, 7 years ago, I released a list of about 15, 20 Americans, U.S. officials, both from elected officials but also appointed individuals. And these individuals, with their names appeared in other sites, but I just put their pictures. I said, well, the state secrets privilege puts a gag order and says, I cannot talk about the FBI targets, okay, in terms of the U.S. persons, officials involved in these terror activities, including the stuff with bin Laden and 9/11. However, I'm just putting these pictures out, and I'm putting a name. And I'm going to name it my State Secrets Privilege Gallery. Well, anybody who was familiar with my case, anybody who was following the case with all the gag orders, they knew immediately this was one way to put out there and for people to know who were the people involved in my case and why the State Secrets Privilege invocation. This was in 2007, end of 2007, early 2008, that this documents went out to people. If you look at that list, you will see Graham Fuller there.
And now I'm joined with Sibel Edmonds. Sibel, you began writing exposés and producing video interviews on Fetullah Gulen, Operation Gladio B, Gulen's entry into this country, and his CIA handlers several years ago. What was your reaction to the WikiLeaks announcement stating they plan to release information exposing Clinton and Gulen intimate ties?
Well, it is a tremendous development, Spiro. Granted, we haven't seen these documents yet, but we know that Julian Assange, through WikiLeaks tweets, has been publicizing their coming email cache from Clinton and her foundation that is going to expose her intimate relationship with mullah Ayatollah Fetullah Gulen.
Okay, we haven't, unless I missed something, and I've got about 40 seconds here before the break, and then I want to finish this up. It'll probably take the whole half hour, so I'll do that in the second half hour. But anyway, I don't think I've seen anything from the WikiLeaks from Assange about Gulen. And who is Julian Assange anyway? I mean, is he an asset too, only releasing what they tell, what he is, the Podesta emails and all of that Pizzagate stuff. But this Fetullah Gulen story, if I'm wrong, let me know. But I don't remember seeing any WikiLeaks stuff on Gulen. And why? Because it would open up too big a, if Gulen is ever outed here, it shows you categorically that Clinton and Obama's were directly involved with creating ISIS and trying to destabilize America. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
The book of Revelation says, "The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ." This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today, so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Back for the second half hour of the Investigative Journal. We're talking about the importance of the Fetullah Gulen story and why he's still allowed to be in the United States when he's really preaching radical Islam all over the world, and how the Clintons brought him over. So what does that tell you? Now, what that tells me is this. Hillary Clinton is, as Obama and people in our government, the Jesuits behind it all, really want to destroy us from within. And nothing's done. Do you think there's going to be an investigation into this, even from the left? I mean the right, with Jeff Sessions in there and Trump? I don't know. I'd like to see it. There's been plenty of evidence over the years of what this guy's intentions are all about, but he still sits in the Pocono Mountains. Now, what does that tell you about the media? The media on the left or the right don't talk about this story either, because they want it hidden. They don't want you to know who the hidden hand is behind all this stuff. Now, the left or the right media don't talk about it. That leads me to believe that this is something that should be talked about and is a huge, huge story. Now, What I'm going to do is play I got about 20 minutes here of Sibel Edmonds, a whistleblower, who's bringing this information out and showing you the Clinton connection. I will not have time to get into a lot of information I found about what Gulen actually states and what many of his people who left this cult, and I call it a cult because it is, has nothing good. Their intentions are masked and has nothing good in store for us. But look at the analogy here. How many times have I told you about how they've labeled the Tony Alamo ministry, a Christian ministry, a cult, putting him in jail for 175 years, but we give for crimes he never committed. They're not a cult, they're a Christian organization, and I've shown that over a decade. But they're being persecuted while we allow a criminal to walk about our country making millions of dollars, billions of dollars, while he's preaching radical Islam all over the world. And I knew about that 10 years ago when he was doing it, like I said, in Norway and Sweden. Now look what's going on in Sweden. And unless we deal with these stories, now Sibel Edmonds doesn't get into the Jesuit connection, but it's good to start there. And then we get to what I talk about here. You put it all together with all those, the prophets and all of the money and power that Rome has all over the world. You got a huge problem, folks. And their goal is to destroy Western civilization piece by piece, step by step, inch by inch, until they get it. And so ask yourself, we're all talking about fake news and the media, Trump is talking about it. The real news is what's not being told to you. And they're playing this game, the left and the right Hegelian dialectic, to keep you away from where the ball is really bouncing. Back to Sibel Edmonds. We got about 20 minutes here, and then we'll continue tomorrow with this. Then Wednesday, come back. You're going to learn all about sanctuary cities and why it could lead to our next civil war. But back to Sibel Edmonds. Here we go.
And of course, as you know, I have been covering Fetullah Gulen for many, many years. And in fact, when nobody had ever even heard of this name, I was talking about Gulen's connection to the CIA, his network, his activities together with the CIA in Central Asia and Caucasus. I have to say I'm very, very excited about these coming emails. And I know some people have been criticizing WikiLeaks for the way or their style in releasing documents, but I want to go on record and say I have no problem at all, and I believe the way they're going about this, WikiLeaks and the organization, in terms of releasing the raw data and letting people to go and sift through this, the public, I'm talking about you and I, we the readers, the viewers, it's the best way, the most transparent way to put out this information. Now, in contrast to what Julian Assange and WikiLeaks is doing, you have the gold digger sold out people like Glenn Greenwald with PayPal and eBay's Pierre Omidyar, billionaire, getting millions of dollars to help the system establishment hide documents. As you know, Edward Snowden supposedly handed over hundreds of thousands of documents, and it's been 3+ years, and we haven't even had 10,000 documents exposed. So I think what they are doing is right, and for anyone who criticizes this style of release, I'm more than happy to sit down and have a debate and explain the advantage of what WikiLeaks is doing. And that's what true leak document release should be about. So we are impatiently waiting for this documents, and we're going to be going through these documents, and it's going to be extremely important. Here we have a presidential candidate, Hillary Clinton, and you're looking at ties, intimate ties between her and her husband with the man in charge of CIA's terror plots and setting up of terrorism organizations in Central Asia, in Caucasus, in Turkey, in the Middle East. So we are impatiently waiting for the release of these documents.
Can you tell us more about the importance of Hillary Clinton's intimate ties with Fethullah Gulen's network in light of the recent failed coup attempt in Turkey?
Absolutely. Now, we are talking about these email troves that's going to come in the next few days, hopefully, through WikiLeaks. But I don't think the emails will go as far back as 1990s, because to understand the relationship and the connections between Clintons, and this is both Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton as a president and later, with Fetullah Gulen, and around money amount that involves hundreds of millions of dollars, we need to go back to mid-1990s. Again, I exposed Operation Gladio B. In mid-1990s, there was a decision by CIA, NATO, MI6 to switch from Operation Gladio A into Operation Gladio B by utilizing these various Islamic factions and setting up terror cells and targeting Central Asia, Caucasus, certain portions of the Middle East. And that's when Fetullah Gulen, Mullah Fetullah Gulen came into this picture. Well, one of the first implementations of Operation Gladio B was during the Balkans conflict, okay? This was when we started taking Balkans apart, and we started making 3-4 countries out of each one of those Eastern Bloc countries. When did this take place? It took place during Bill Clinton's presidency. It was on his watch. Operation Gladio B it started during the administration of Bill Clinton. And in 1998, when the grooming took place with Fetullah Gulen and the CIA NATO players, it was per Clinton's, and this is both Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton, that was decided to have private planes going to Turkey and taking this guy, Mullah Fetullah Gulen, this Islamist terrorist, put him on the plane, bring him into the United States. Now, I worked in the FBI, and I have gone on record for the past 14 years. The very explosive, important files that I got the state secrets privilege order on, I got gag order on, had to do with this special operation, Operation Gladio B, for the files that dated from 1997, late 1997, until February 2002. And I can tell you from first-hand information, from direct information, that FBI was already by 2000-2001 pursuing Fetullah Gulen in several different divisions, both regular crime division, counterterrorism division, and also white-collar crime. So they had several investigations going on that started immediately in late 1999 on Fetullah Gulen. And it was Clinton's White House through Janet Reno, and this was when Janet Reno was in charge of the Department of Justice, that the FBI investigators, and these were my direct bosses, special agents, were ordered to stop all the criminal investigations and funnel all those folders on Fetullah Gulen, fake files of heroin connection, money laundering, and all sorts of embezzlement. That was actually done under the umbrella of the CIA's unit set up for him, to take all those files, and they transferred those files to counterintelligence. And for people who don't understand the difference between counterintelligence and counterterrorism and criminal division in the FBI, in counterintelligence investigations, you gather information, but you can never, ever use that information in court to jail someone. You cannot bring, as FBI, a court case, meaning it's only for intelligence gathering purposes. So Janet Reno, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, they pressured the FBI, they gave direct orders saying, everything you have collected on Fetullah Gulen, you are going to seize this operation investigations. You are going to transfer all those files and only pursue it under counterintelligence. Meaning, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, they gave this guy and his criminal activities in the United States immunity, blanket immunity. They actually stepped in and saved this terrorist, this criminal, this heroin operator. And this happened on Bill Clinton's watch. So this is why I'm emphasizing the importance of these emails that we would like to see and analyze, but also to remind our viewers that the relationship, as we are going to show, actually let's show it right now. Here is former President Bill Clinton, the man who brought in the terrorist Imam Fetullah Gulen into the United States, okay, on Fetullah Gulen and Fetullah Gulen's relationship with himself and his wife. Let's watch this.
Good evening. In this interdependent world, the fates of people on opposite sides of the globe are increasingly linked. And it's critical to keep the lines of communications open as much as we can. That's why the communication between the Turkish-American community and the people of Turkey is so important. It's important to ensure your vibrant cultural heritage, to make sure it continues to thrive and inspires and builds a bridge that reaches over all faiths and creeds and the ocean. By being here tonight, you are contributing to lasting peace and security at home and abroad. You're contributing to the promotion of the ideals of tolerance and interfaith dialogue, inspired by Fetullah Gulen and his transnational social movement. You do it through your everyday lives, and you are truly strengthening the fabric of our common humanity, as well as promoting the ongoing cultural and educational ties that bind our world together. I want to thank you for your contributions to America, for your contributions to stronger Turkish-American relationships and better understanding, and especially for your friendship to Hillary and to me. Thank you.
So as you can see, these people, Clinton administration was already working with this terrorist, with this money launderer, with this heroin dealer, with $20+ billion net worth here in the United States, dating back in late 1990s. And of course, with the coming email, we are going to see that they were being paid off further through all the money, the drug money, the heroin money, the money laundering money, the Islamic terror money that is being funneled, has been funneled from Fetullah Gulen and his network to, of course, Hillary Clinton, our presidential candidate, to her foundation. So we are basically looking at thugs. We are looking at criminal entities here. I'm not talking about Fetullah Gulen. I'm talking about a president and later a former president and a presidential candidate, Hillary Clinton.
Now, you have been emphasizing the CIA's Graham Fuller in his role in your state secrets privilege case in Fetullah Gulen's operations. In fact, in 2008, you released the names of culprits involved in your state secrets privilege case, and Graham Fuller shows up prominently there. Tell us a bit more about Graham Fuller.
Well, as you mentioned and provided our viewers with some of the footage and the documentation, I began screaming the name CIA's Graham Fuller as one of the main players in Operation Gladio B and with Fetullah Gulen and setting up madrasas and terror cells in Central Asia and Caucasus way back when in 2008. So you're looking at 8 years ago, I kept screaming, saying, you have to look at this man. I know it said he was retired from the CIA, but Graham Fuller never retired from the CIA. He still works both for NATO and the CIA as contract worker. He's getting paid. He works in the RAND corporations, and he's still one of the main handlers for the terror network of Imam Mullah Fetullah Gulen here in the United States, and there are other figures as well. And again, these figures were handpicked by Clintons during Clinton administration for these operations, utilizing this mullah, this Ayatollah Fetullah Gulen. Other people, for example, would be Mark Grossman. Mark Grossman used to be the U.S. ambassador appointed by the Clintons, the Clinton crime family. I have to refer to them as mafia, to Turkey. And while he was there, even before Fetullah Gulen came in, to the United States, was brought by CIA airplane to the United States, it was Graham Fuller and Mark Grossman, okay, and he's a dual Israeli-U.S. citizen. They were the ones who were grooming and doing the prep work for bringing Fetullah Gulen into the United States and setting up his network in the United States. And of course, they also were in charge of a lot of the heroin labs that back then, some of them were in Turkey, some of them were in Azerbaijan. Again, when you look at those handlers, you see them all handpicked, Hillary, Bill Clinton administration era in mid to late 1990s.
Well, in light of Hillary Clinton being the current presidential candidate for the Democratic Party, what would all this mean if she were to be reelected?
Well, what would all this mean to us, to journalists, and to our viewers, to the people? It's totally a different story than what it would mean to the mainstream media in the United States, all the think tanks and NGOs and foundations. I mean, we are looking at a couple who have basically been walking on the water, walking on water. They have weathered 4 or 5 potential prosecutions. We saw what happened with the Libya-related emails and Hillary Clinton. We are looking at an FBI director that is directly tied to them and their foundation. We are looking at this woman Lynch, the head of Department of Justice, who's been pocketed by the Clinton foundations and Clintons, has private conversations with the targets of her investigations in tarmacs, okay, who was employed by a law firm that was cleaning, laundering, whatever, whitewashing Clinton foundation's accounting books. So what is going to happen with the DOJ and the FBI? Well, so far, nothing has touched this couple. That's why I'm referring to them as the mob, as the mafia family. And as far as the U.S. mainstream media is concerned, take a look at it. This information came through Assange and WikiLeaks, and we hopefully will see these documents coming out. I invite people to closely watch the mainstream media. You're going to see how they're going to whitewash all this, because they have been doing the dirty laundry of Clinton administration. 90% of the media, which is the liberal media, that's New York Times, Washington Post, LA Times, NBC, MSNBC, of course they are not going to utilize this in any way or showcase it. And then the next step is the 5th state that we have been referring to. Look, Clintons were directly supported. One of the treasure troves that Julian Assange released had to do with the direct connections between George Soros and Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. In this particular case, when Hillary Clinton, this criminal, I don't want to cuss too much during our show, the man is communicating directly, and she's the Secretary of the State, and dictating, telling her what to do on what foreign policy, what to do in Albania, what to do in the Balkans, okay? And this is when she was the Secretary of State. So, and the same thing, the same George Soros, that evil man, is the one who brought to us and presented to us Obama, what we have seen for the past 8 years. And look at all the NGOs, whether they are so-called media watchdogs like FAIR.org, whether they are government watchdogs, so-called watchdog organizations such as POGO, Project on Government Oversight. Well, this man is enrolling, he's giving money to all of them. He's bankrolling all these organizations. So you're not gonna see anything meaningful that should be in place from these NGOs paid by George Soros and the foundations. You're not going to see anything from the mainstream media. This couple will be in jail by now, would have been in jail, had they been ordinary, real Americans, okay? They are like the mob families. They have the media pocketed, and they have networked with all these mafia mob thugs, whether it's Fetullah Gulen terror organization, the drug heroin dealers, or it's with the evil man George Soros. So that's the network they belong to. So it's going to boil down to you and me. It's going to boil down to the people here in the United States who still think their votes matter, and even to a certain degree it's going to depend on the people around the world. because what they do, what happens here, as we can see with these emails, has direct implications all over the world. It's Fetullah Gulen, CIA, Soros. These are the people who organized that failed attempted coup in Turkey. It's the same people who had first-hand directing, managing what we saw in Ukraine. These are the same people, based on the emails released, who manage what we do in the Balkans. So this would be an eye-opener, not only for people in the United States, but also around the world. But I really hope that people just stop and say, really, just going into this, choosing between the lesser of two evils in their mind, we're going to go down on the boots and we are going to cast our vote for this crime family. Okay, for Hillary Clinton. I mean, could you get someone nastier, dirtier than this couple? I have to say, of all the politicians, presidential candidates, everyone I have seen through my almost 5 decades of life, I have never seen anything like this crime family called Clinton. And we are looking forward, and hopefully these emails will have far-reach implications. I won't hold my breath, but I am thankful to see that WikiLeaks is releasing these raw data the way they are and the way they have been doing. So if people are looking and comparing that, what WikiLeaks is doing, and compare it to sold-out, controlled opposition, limited hangouts like Glenn Greenwald and Snowden, they should see the value of what he has been doing. And at least in this case, and he did the same thing. Julian Assange was the only outspoken person from the so-called whistleblowers community raising the alarm on what NBC did. So it was a support by really putting the truth forward and saying, NBC, this is unprecedented. They actually directly participated in this illegal coup attempt. So far, what I'm doing is I'm saying bravo, and I'm clapping for WikiLeaks on this particular case and saying very good. And we are impatiently waiting for more.
Okay, I only got about 40 seconds, but like I said earlier in the show, I don't remember seeing any WikiLeaks regarding the Gulen connection to the Clintons. Now, if I'm wrong, please, somebody who has seen that, let me know. So, that gives me a question, another question mark. Who's Julian Assange? And are they only releasing what they want us to hear regarding pedophilia and Pizzagate, John Podesta's emails, etc., etc.? So think about that. We're going to come back and do more on this connection of Gulen and the Clintons and really what they're all about. Because it'll get down to really this. It answers your questions. Who's forming ISIS? What's their real intentions? And again, a litmus test you can use with Donald Trump is, let's see how far he gets with releasing Gulen. Or is he ever going to do that? And what are his motives? Someone in the media has to mention this, and you know the left and the right are very silent on this. Back tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the left-behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.